Hey, everybody. It's the epistemologist here. We're talking about a lot of things regarding epistemology, but mainly about the future of knowledge, information,
Open
information
source.
technology, open source,
Yeah.
and economics. And so we have a lot of ground to cover, but
Normally we
so
do
I don't
one
exactly know how
topic.
this will go. Normally we do one topic. Can we condense all of that into one topic?
Let's find out.
Um, let's say that one topic is open source.
Okay.
Open source is a way of making software accessible. It's mainly a philosophy and a working methodology, um, mainly around not just about around software, but around community. So it's a social thing. It's where people get in there, work with other people's code, solve some kind of problem or set of problems, and then share that solution back to the community. So it's a way of collaborating over software, and we talk about it a lot on this particular channel because we believe it to be the future of manufacturing and the future of uh, how we build things in general.
How we build
So
knowledge.
how we build knowledge. Knowledge itself, we don't say a lot of ways we don't say, or a lot of times we don't say that we're creating. What do we say? We say building knowledge because it's an engineering thing.
Yeah.
We're actually creating knowledge from scratch.
Yeah.
We're not discovering knowledge. That's the
Although
thing.
although with open source it would be more like disseminating knowledge sort of thing. But there is a process of building as well in open source, which is one of the
Yeah.
benefits of open source is that anyone can help you build, knowledge on how to solve the problems that you have.
Yeah.
And so
Anyone with the will to just roll up their sleeves and get in there
yep.
and get at the parts and tinker around with it.
And that's why it's been so powerful is that and that's something that I don't think a lot of people who aren't in the development field really understand.
Yeah.
Open source,
No, it's
yeah,
it's a stealth powerhouse
it
because all of the
relies on people working for free. The
yeah,
entire industry, the entire software industry relies on people working essentially for free and
but not
providing
only that,
yeah.
all of the tech giants in Silicon Valley are built on a mountain of open source that they don't talk about
Yep.
for the most part, unless you're a developer, unless you get into it. You see how much open source they're using. It's multi-billions of dollars worth of software
Yep.
obtained for free. So you don't see the numbers. You don't
Yep.
know how big of a thing open source really is for this kind of community, for the industry as a
It's
whole.
I've talked about it with some people, and it is to try to put it into scale. It seems insane if you were to just say, yeah, Google is built on the backs of this technology that is offered for free, and developers know it's worth something, but we're not going to charge for it because it's worth more together, right? To solve these problems together
Yeah.
than it is to sequester off. And then there have been companies that try to, make everything proprietary, write everything themselves, and they don't have enough manpower to do it. It takes too much manpower. Like Microsoft. We're talking Microsoft, Intel. Those people try to, proprietize because that's the way better for them to make a profit off of. And yet, they still run into problems trying to do that, and they can only keep just a bit of it on the top proprietary as open source drives everything underneath them and will eventually they have to keep innovating because otherwise they're going to get outstripped by open source technology and
Yeah,
somebody's going to
it's
build their
pretty
thing.
crazy how big strides
Yeah.
open source has made in the industry. Every company has an open source strategy. There's tons of huge projects come out of these big companies that are all free and open source. And it's so software is really moving pretty fast only because it's so easy to copy information. And information is really what we're working on with knowledge. Knowledge is a kind of information. technology works on that kind of thing. So the process that open source uses is this sort of like own it, solve it, share it cycle. It's like a collaborative cycle. So we all like take from the community, add a solution, share the solution back, and eventually like all of us are pitching in solutions together collaboratively. It's an amazing engine of progress that you don't get in other areas, mainly because of red tape, mainly because of if something is proprietary, someone wants to make money off of it. There's like copyright claims, there's like intellectual property claims, there's all
patent
kinds of
law,
like,
patent.
Yeah. So people want you to not have power, basically, because they want black box their secret.
Yep.
And really, you come down to the realization that there is a fundamental conflict of interest between making universal progress against all problems and making money, which is bad. But what happens is you make some money. If you make a lot, you can make a lot more money if you are willing to avoid solving certain problems, or worse, creating certain problems. You've heard plan.
We lost you for a second. Can you say that again?
I'm going through this dark zone again. So you've heard obsolescence.
Yeah.
You know, it's where a product is made to be deficient in some way, or eventually something will break.
Car companies like to do it. Like in 5 years, they have something that kind of wears down. It's rare to get a component that lasts longer than X amount of years when they could have made them better. And maybe not cheaper, but, you know, only moderately more expensive that lasts 20 years, you know?
Yeah. There's many such examples of companies making a lot more on preventing a problem from being solved. They make a lot more money.
Yeah.
Printer cartridges cost a lot of money.
Pharmaceuticals?
For hardly any ink at all. Like you buy this thing that costs a ton that that lasts maybe a few months, and then you just have to keep buying their
printer ink. A lot of at least in, I don't know if it's still true, but they used to the ink would just run the entire time. It would never stop running. They wouldn't have any system in place to keep the ink from running out. So eventually, like if you just printed one thing, and
there's no incentive for them to solve some of these problems, because that just means they're going to sell more stuff.
Yeah. Then you have to go buy $30 ink again, right?
And it's crazy how many times there's a conflict of interest between solving all problems and making money, to the point where there's this dramatic choice that you have to make. If you're genuinely interested in solving problems, you're going to have to make the choice at some point to forego the chance at money, at making a lot of money.
When we say making money, it's likely,
a lot of money.
Yeah, it's likely that if you solve problems, you'll have a decent living thing, right? Sure. If you're good at solving problems, people will pay you for that. It's not like you're going to go broke if you solve problems. It's more like you're never going to be the billionaire. You're never going to be a tycoon.
Yeah. A lot of that requires special privileges anyway.
Right.
There's a business club, and you're not a member of it unless you are.
Unless you are. Yeah. But even so, or even just a millionaire or a big or a business person who is at a level where, they can make tons and tons of money. That's very rare at that point if your goal is to solve problems, universally. Right. And that's the sort of nature of how it is. And I'm not sure that we had that opinion that if you solve problems, wealth will come to you, sort of thing.
It kind of does. It's true.
But it's also but it's also not,
because wealth is created by you're actually solving some problems in order to sell a solution.
Yep.
But what it does mean is that you're preventing some other problem. Like, for instance, if you mark your product up the price really high, it can be a problem because you're reducing uh, access, or you're creating a sort of artificial scarcity.
Yep.
Um, we want these things to be abundant, but because of the supply and demand dynamic, the more abundant it is, the better we are at solving the problem of getting that thing out to people. But the less we are at being able to make money on it.
Yep.
Because if everyone can get your thing, then you're not making money.
No.
So unless
you're doing margins in bulk and a whole other, you're solving logistics problems at that point, and you're making money off of solving the logistics of getting the thing from point A to point B.
Yeah. So I mean, we talked a little bit about future. The future is amazing and all that. What kind of future the open source economy could look like.
Mm-hmm.
And people are making some inroads in this space. There's a lot of progress being made, and there's a ton of work to do. And it's also very fast paced and moving very quickly.
Well,
but
I kind of want to talk about the open source imposters.
Imposters?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we might as well.
Well, because it's common, because open source has become a buzzword.
It gets popular.
Yeah. There are people, so anyone that's selling you the idea that it's open source, but they're asking for, like, you get onto their site or whatever, and they're not providing any information unless you pay to get into it, that's not open source, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen this, I think, RDS, Robert David Steele, does this with his stuff and his open source methodology. And we looked into that, and that's not open source. It's essentially open source in that it's more crowdsourcing than open source. He's telling you how to crowdsource information for his open source information, which is, for an intelligence guy, I bet that's really nice. I bet that's really cool.
Well, that's what Google does.
Yeah.
They get Google Home in your home, and they can then crowdsource the collection of data.
Yes.
For advertising purposes or selling it however they want.
Crowdsourcing is asking a bunch of different people, everyone, or a bunch of different people, thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not millions of people, a question, and seeing what they answer. That's essentially what a crowdsourcing thing is, right?
Crowdsource, open source, it's not the same.
No, open source is you present people with, hey, here is my project. Here is everything about my project. Here's how I built it. It's almost a recipe, right? In programming, you wouldn't, you can take an open source project and build it and have it do what the author intended, right? So if we're moving into a space outside of software, it's got to be, an instruction on how to do the thing that you want to do. And so one of the things we talk about is like a recipe is a good example of maybe not open. Yeah, it's kind of a good example of how to think about open source maybe for most people. A recipe is something that can be shared, and people don't mind sharing, and it tells you how to make the cookie or whatever it is, and you can then understand that you take that, you make your cookie, and maybe you make some adjustments to the recipe, and you make it your own, and then you republish it, and you have a new recipe, right? Instead of chocolate chip cookies, you add mint, and it's chocolate chip mint cookies or something.
Yeah, so based on this open source recipe, you can become a baker.
Yes.
And sell these cookies, and charge what you want to charge, and modify what you want to modify, and build your own little business based on open recipes.
Yes. What it is not. What open source technology is not is you've asked thousands and thousands of people of how to make a cookie, and they take all that data and then they make some sort of generalized copy through data manipulation or data parsing, right? That's not open source, right?
Like getting an impression of
what
a particular amalgamation recipe from a bunch of different crowdsourced recipes.
Yes.
It's not exactly the same thing. So it needs to be a full cycle that goes out to you,
Yep.
that empowers you, because you have the information and it's distributed, and so it's not centralized. It's totally decentralized because you have everything you need to build your own little business and make a living. And what you're charging is basically a convenience fee on top of this open source thing that basically everyone has access to. So if someone else, a consumer of cookies, wants a cookie from, they can either follow the recipe themselves or pay you to do it, pay you that convenience fee. And it's really that simple. So you get like the ability for everyone to earn a living. And everyone's moving along much faster because we get all those solutions, which is really the power of that kind of economy. It's not in making money.
It's about empowering
the solution.
Yeah, it's empowering people to have the solution that they need at the time.
It's a switch in mentality.
It's kind of like YouTube.
From scarcity to abundance, really.
One could argue that YouTube has been a great source, open source thing where people put on their videos and they're like, all right, this is how you fix your toilet. All right, go in this here and do this thing, and there you go. That's how you fix a toilet. And then in the comments, somebody would say, oh yeah, we tried it this way and this was better. That's kind of the thought of open source. And if you provide tools and you find ways to make that easier, faster, more formalized, meaning they can, instead of like a guy in a YouTube video, he gives you a more, understandable instruction document that then, or something, right, that then can be worked on, right? So if it's one of the things that would be nice, that's nice about text, is you can work on it and change it over time, whereas a video is kind of a one shot unless you're cutting it and recutting it.
Maybe there will be more tools regarding merging video content together and doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see and the progress of where we're heading because of open source, I think.
Yeah. But you mentioned Robert David Steele, and I think I like the kinds of things he was saying at first, because he was using the buzzwords that I know that I'm familiar with. So he used things like open source everything engineering. He used that term. Yep. And that's what I'm looking for. But the thing is when you get into the meat of what he's doing, he doesn't represent it.
No.
He doesn't even explain it all that well.
No.
But as an engineer, you're looking for the actual projects he's worked on. Like what are the things he's done to contribute? Because at that level, you are a peer working on some project in that space, or you're not really the authority he wants to be on that particular topic. So open source everything engineering is kind of what we're looking for, yes, but we want the genuine thing. Yes. We don't want this sort of like puffery on top of it, a guy with a suit with the credentials and all of that, like writing books and being authoritative about
what things are.
And
yeah,
he has nothing to show for it.
Yeah,
he has absolutely nothing to show.
Yes.
And he then goes on to talk about a truth channel, like one truth channel for like everybody, which is for us as epistemologists, we're just that's a recipe for
failure.
It's centralization.
Yeah,
it's a central point of failure for obtaining knowledge. Actually, what you want is many different channels.
Yep.
That form a kind of rumor mill for opinions.
Yep.
And everyone is able to generate impressions based off of all of that information. It's way more empowering.
Yep.
And that's what we get with the internet. That's why the internet is so amazing.
That's why it's so
will
powerful.
Continue to be.
Yeah. And
it's because of all of the differing opinions.
Yeah.
And that's the model we are promoting with the own it, solve it, share it cycle, is because everyone has their own opinion on what needs to be solved right now. So they can just go and solve it, and no one has to orchestrate anything. Everyone's doing exactly what they want, basically. And so it aligns motivations, it aligns productivity, it aligns all these things that we want in an economy. We get the solution. Everyone's like seeing big bounds in progress, except for the money situation. The money situation is very calm in comparison.
Yeah.
Because again, convenience fees, like you're just making a living in the margin. Well, yeah, because money is just a mitigation for scarcity. And what we're talking about is an abundance mindset.
Yep.
Abundance.
Yeah.
I think that's about all I got for tonight.
All right. Well, like, subscribe, explain your position, give us some
As
feedback.
Usual.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain what your opinion is.
Yeah, we like that.
We don't usually get that sort of thing, but
Hey,
to each their own.
I ask each time, and every time that I remember. So
we'll have a common outro. We'll just be like, yeah, just drop something there.
Yeah. Anyway,
Thanks, we appreciate it.
Yeah.